Call Don now, 682-1270. News Talk 1270 KIML.
News Talk 1270 KIML. The Don Carpenter Show. I want to thank you for joining us this morning. I want to thank everybody for calling in with the Cindy Hill stuff. It's I find this stuff fascinating because I'm learning more and more about it every day. And if anybody has any more thoughts you want to get off your chest about the Cindy Hill flap, 682-1270 is the number, 682-1270. We'll just leave the phones open for that for the rest of the show. If you want to call in about it, feel free. But I think I'm going to move on to something a little bit different. And, of course, if we get sidetracked, we get sidetracked. But I want to move on to the Paula Deen thing. And if you haven't heard the Fox News at the top of the hour or, been watching TV over the weekend, celebrity chef Paula Deen's contract with the Food Network won't be renewed, the network said on Friday. The latest fallout over revelations that she admitted to using a racial epithet in the past. Deen's contract with the network, which airs 3 shows featuring the chef, expires at the end of the month. The Food Network's announcement followed reports that Deen acknowledged in a lawsuit deposition of using the N-word. Earlier in the week, the network said it would monitor the situation, but that they do not tolerate any form of discrimination. In a statement, Deen thanked the network for 11 great years. And for those that don't know, Paula Deen's she's a Southern lady, an older gray-haired lady. Everything she makes has butter and it's fried, and it's food that's not good for you, but it's good. That kind of food. And she's 60 years old. So she grew up in the South during the 60s. Yeah, she's 60 years old. So she grew up during the 1960s in the South. And in this deposition, she admitted to using a racial slur. And I guess the lesson to be learned from this is that you can't tell the truth about things like this if you're a public personality, especially. I mean, if you're just a cab driver or a truck driver or something like that, you could probably admit it when you go to court. But if you go to court and you're a TV personality and you're famous, you can't admit to this kind of stuff anymore because you will be fired. There are people that listen to every. I wouldn't say every. I'm sure there's not somebody in some special interest group listening to me because I'm, pretty far below the radar. But there are people listening to every major media personality and waiting for them to slip up because they are professional muckrakers, so to speak. Let's go to the phones. News Talk 1270 KIML, Don Carpenter Show. You're on the air.
Hey, Don. They showed a lot of integrity by telling the truth. And I think, if I was looking for somebody, I'd want an integrity. Because you know what? I've said that word too. But when we grew up a long time ago, it wasn't something you knew about as a little kid. You just knew that was the name.
Oh, yeah.
And once I became adult and started figuring stuff out, that word dropped from my vocabulary.
Yeah. I think once people grow up, they these things. And the one thing that, I don't know if you've heard the entire story, but she admitted to using this word, maybe about 10 years ago. She was robbed at gunpoint by a black man. And she said she used that word when, talking to her husband about the robbery. It's an indefensible word to use. But I think if somebody pulled a gun on you, you might not be.
She was in extreme distress even afterwards.
Yeah. You say and do things you're not quite sure what you're actually saying and doing. Yeah.
But when you stop and think about it, then you could probably say, I was mugged by a large black man. Here's the description.
Yeah, well, that and I mean, she's proven over the years that she's not a real racist. I mean, she supported the president in his both of his election efforts. So I mean, she can't be that racist.
Well, even with that, I just think a lot of guilty white people.
Well, there's a lot of that going around too.
But it's. She showed integrity, and if she would have said being from the South, I had never said that, I would have jumped up and yelled liar in her face.
Yeah, well,
because, I'm sorry, but if you're from the South, that's the word that's mentioned all the time.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not a good thing, but that's how things were, especially back in the 1960s.
And, I'll jump back to 10 years ago when I was still in the service. Every group you had coming out, these rappers and all that was, besides the F word, every other word besides F word was that word.
Oh, yeah.
The N word we're talking about.
Yeah, and that, I mean, music is still like that. I mean, that hasn't changed a bit.
You ask them about it, they say, well, I didn't say that. I said
yeah, with an A at the end.
The AGGA.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, you didn't. You're an ignorant fool trying to talk yourself out of something because now you can say something the white guy can't without getting fired.
Well, yeah, there's
what if I'm listening to Snoop Dogg or Tupac, what's his name, Tupac Underground, because he's dead.
Yeah.
And I'm singing along with it going down the road, and I look over out the window, and there's a black guy in the car next to me, and he sees me singing. So what? Am I supposed to get in trouble now?
Well, I don't think the average person in the black community really cares that much about it. It's professional troublemakers like Reverend Al.
Well, Reverend Al is one of those N-words. I look at the content of the character, and he is one of the N-words.
Well, I'm not going to touch out with a 10-foot pole. I want to keep my job.
The guy I know out here working on the road crews, asphalt and that stuff, he's a black man. And every people I meet, usually black people or black women. But you get these occasional people that want to cause trouble, cause racial strife, cause a class distinction, well, then they are no better than what they're trying to, what they supposed to rally against.
Yeah.
If Reverend Al Sharpton cared so much about people on Jesse Jackson, well, then why don't you guys stop wearing your $800 suits and give some of your money to people to help people instead of just causing a divide? If you create a divide between the races, then you're the worst part of that race.
Yeah, I mean, and there are people that make their living off trying to divide people, and that's the one thing that's always kind of bothered me about this is the people that are claiming to try to help relations in this country are the ones making a living by making relations worse.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better right there.
Yeah, and it's a chilling effect. It makes everybody in the media afraid to even talk about this kind of situation.
And I'm pretty sure if you grew up any time through the 60s, 70s, possibly the 80s, and you were a child, that's a word you heard used several times.
Yeah, well, I mean, I won't say that I've never heard it, but I guess I was kind of lucky. I grew up in an area where you didn't really get too much discrimination and racism. So I guess I was kind of lucky in that respect.
Well, I'll relate a story real quick. I used to live in Denver when I was a child. Every summer we'd come up here to see our cousins and live with my dad. I was with my cousins in the store. As a matter of fact, it's the old Decker store where Trends is right now. Cookie's Barbecue.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And, some black people pulled up outside. And my cousins were wide-eyed. They run right up to the window, little noses pressed against the window, and they said, look, it's and they said the word. They didn't know any better. And I'm standing there going, well, it's the guy. What's the problem? I've heard the word used that, but, I lived in a bigger city where it wasn't so isolated.
Sure.
And they knew no better. It's not because their parents used the word, because there weren't nobody around town to use the word on at all. back then.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's how the kids being treated or taught, and that's where I have so much angst against the Reverend Al Sharpton and Jessica Jackson, because they try to get the worst out of each race. They try to make it the worst possible. You know, every white is some slave owner, and every black is some victim.
Yeah, well,
and that's not the case.
And it's something I call a professional victim mentality, and these guys are you know, and it's not just the racial things. I mean, it extends to other minorities, extends to women, extends to the gay community. I mean, there are people out there that are looking to start trouble because they make a living off starting this trouble and dividing people. And I think that's a shame.
You know, I'll relate one more story to you real quick.
Absolutely.
I used to be in the National Guard. When they were getting ready to go overseas, over to Kuwait and all that stuff there, here we were sitting there and on the rear detachment, and they had a person come in from out of state who's going to go with our unit, and he just had an attitude chip on his shoulder like you wouldn't believe. Anyway, this captain, I can't even pronounce his name. I wouldn't know how to pronounce his name. Except it started with M.O., so we always called him Captain Mo. And he was telling us his father knew Barack Obama's father. So I guess because he's only like a generation away from Kenya himself.
Oh, okay.
He saw this guy with all this attitude, and he goes, "Come here." He goes, "Sergeant Jackson." He goes, "Come here. I need to talk to you." And I was right there, so I got to listen to it all. But he goes, when I was coming over here and somebody told me I'm going to GIllette, Wyoming, I'm like, what kind of podunk redneck crap is that? He goes, I came here just waiting for the first person to say something to me. And he goes, you know what happened after about 3 months? I realized nobody cares as long as I did my job and do what's expected of me as a person in the community. He goes, they don't care what color you are here in Wyoming. They really don't. And I kind of stopped. I was like, it's pretty much true around here. As long as you pull your weight and you don't become a drain on anybody, either be the lazy guy in your work crew that doesn't do nothing but get paid the same. As long as you hold your weight, do your job, and don't be a victim, we don't really care too much what color you are or where you're from.
Oh, yeah, and as long as you keep to yourself and don't bother anybody, I mean, it seems like, and I think that's a Western mentality. I think it's a little bit different, and the West was always a little bit different than maybe the South or even the Northeast. I mean, I've seen just as bad racism in the Northeast as I've seen in the South.
Yeah, but here, really, we don't care. And the only reason Barack Obama wasn't popular here is because we're a Republican state. And that's about it.
Oh, yeah. I have no doubt about that.
Well, I got to go, Don. Thanks.
Yep, thanks a lot. And we might have another call. Let's go to... Okay, maybe not. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll finish this up. News Talk 1270 KIML.